What is going on, everyone? It is college football talk, and I'm your host, Hunter DeLauder, and today is week 13 recap. We're going to dive into all the biggest action from this past weekend, highlighting all the biggest games, including Indiana getting mollywopped, Penn State surviving, chaos in the SEC, and a big-time Big 12 game that went down in Tempe, Arizona. So we're going to dive into all that, plus around the country, and we're going to recap best bets from this past weekend. So make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast, trying to get to 200 subscribers. The only way we can do that is if you guys subscribe to the pod, like, share the videos, and listen and follow on Spotify as well. If you want to hit me up on the socials, remember, on Twitter, @DeLauderHunter, and then on Instagram, Hunter.DeLauder83. So make sure you guys are hitting me up there. And without further ado, we'll get right into it here. As number 2, Ohio State blows out number 5, Indiana, 38-15. This was the big game everyone had circled for this weekend, at least from a national perspective. And I said coming into this game, if Indiana wanted to have any respect and wanted to have any sort of playoff consideration still, if they lost, they need to keep this within the number. They did not. Fortunately for them, they did get help from other conferences. Some teams in those conferences falling by the numbers. And so Indiana might have been spared, but nonetheless, they got blown out. They started the game out perfectly, though. Opening drive, 11 plays, 70 yards, went right down the field, scored a touchdown. Everyone's like, whoa, what is this team, making a statement here? After that, though, Ohio State outscored Indiana 31-0 before Indiana scored again. It was all Buckeyes. They were the more physical team. They were the more dominant team, both sides of the football. It was kind of clear as day. Eventually, talent was going to take over. Indiana had not seen a roster or a team that was even remotely close to Ohio State, and they saw it in full fashion on Saturday. And the Buckeyes showed no more mercy. They stalled a few times in the red zone, so the score could have been a lot worse than what it actually was. Indiana was held to 153 yards of total offense. They were sacked. They allowed 5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. They couldn't stop the run remotely well enough against Ohio State. Ohio State averaged a little over 4 yards a carry. It wasn't anything crazy, but this was a team that was ranked first in the nation in rushing defense, and that was a big question coming into the game. And Ohio State, I think, performed well enough. Curtis Work struggled mightily after the first drive. He went 8 of 18 for 68 yards on the whole day. So there's no way, shape, or form you're going to ever beat Ohio State putting up numbers like that. And as far as from a playoff perspective now, again, what happened in the SEC is going to save them, I think, now. If some of the chaos didn't happen, I think this is a team that you clearly show is not built to be in the playoff, shouldn't be in the playoff regardless of record. I understand how many wins they have, and they're beating the teams on their schedule. But when you stack this team up against a playoff caliber type roster, talent-wise, just in every category you can think of, I mean, this team lacks significant, anything. They can't. They're getting competitively outclassed in every statistical category, every sort of preview, look ahead spot. I don't know, but I mean, this was clear as day what was going to be coming. And if you stack this Indiana team up respectfully against, the Tennessees, the Georgias, the Ole Misses, the Oregons, this team's not stacking up against any of those. Even Notre Dame probably. And I still think Notre Dame is a little iffy. Now they had a big win this weekend, but even them, like Indiana would struggle mightily. Let's not kid ourselves. So they got saved for sure. I still think now that I think they still have like a 90-something% chance to make the playoff as long as they beat Purdue. I mean, they could still go to the Big Ten title game. They're going to need Penn State and Ohio State both to lose, I think is now what it is. But it's not, this team's not a playoff team, but they're going to get into the playoffs, and they're probably going to get mollywopped in the first round. So let's just all prepare ourselves for that. But anyway, we're going to be moving on now. Oklahoma, defensive masterclass, stuns number 7 Alabama 24-3. I think this was the upset of the weekend for sure. the palace on the prairie where legends have walked and stepped onto that field. It was senior night. It was senior day across the SEC. And I think something we learned here is be very weary of underdogs on senior day at home. So just a heads up in that because there's quite a few teams that had senior days on Saturday, and they pulled off some big-time upsets, and this is one of them. Oklahoma, this was a point spread I thought Alabama was going to take care of. It was 13.5. Just coming off the LSU whooping in the Mercer game, getting ready for this one, and they got splattered in every category you could think of. On the field, it was a complete, Oklahoma's up here. It's like they had like flipped like personalities for the night coming into this game. Like you have an Oklahoma team that's coming in just treading water, just trying to get it to the end of the season. Let's be fair. I mean, this has been a disaster of a season from the injuries, just from the lack of quarterback production, from the offensive line not doing well. And then you have an Alabama team that's coming in sky high, getting ready, just like this is a gear up game. Got the Iron Bowl. We're going to finish the year out strong, possibly still SEC title game to get ready for. And they just got smoked. Oklahoma in the first half alone. Here's your first half paper pop stat. Oklahoma rushed for 205 yards in the first half. Alabama had 97 total yards of offense. That's the kind of night it was. They could not get anything going. They finished the night rushing for only 70 yards. Jalen Milroe was held to 11 of 26 for 164 yards. He had threw 3 interceptions all in the second half, including a pick 6 being one of them. This Oklahoma defense was all over the field. I mean, creating pressure every single play, it felt like. I mean, they were stuffing Milroe, because this is an Alabama offense that's so quarterback-centric. Like, if Milroe's not going or being productive, this offense is shut down. I mean, it's like it's like one of these, trains that needs coal to keep it, powered and keep it going. And then, the conductor says, let's just try to get it. Let's just not put coal in it and see how far it goes. Eventually, it's going to stop, and then stranded. That's kind of like this Alabama offense. It's going to go as long as Milroe's going until eventually he can't, or he's going to have a bad night like he's had a few times this year, and then they stop, and then they can't do anything. I mean, the OU defense had a sack, but had 9 tackles for loss, 2 touched on the 3 turnovers. I mean, Oklahoma's defense outscored Alabama's offense. Put that in perspective. I mean, Jalen Milroe was held to half a yard per carry on 15 carries. And here's a fun little stat for you, too. In the 3 losses this year, Jalen Milroe has been held to 28 yards of rushing combined in the 3 losses. So Vanderbilt, Tennessee, and now Oklahoma. So there's your key. Again, if you stop Milroe, you're going to win this game. You're going to win. It's very simple. And, vice versa for Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold, who it's been a very up and down season. He's played a lot better as of late going into the game, last couple of games, but nonetheless, it's been a very up and down season. But his legs, my goodness, 25 carries, 131 yards. He only threw for 68 yards. So if I were to tell you Alabama, coming into the game, let's say it's Thursday, maybe even Friday, and I say, hey, I'm a time traveler, so I've been to this game. I already know what happens. But I'm gonna say, what if I told you that Alabama's going to Oklahoma, they're gonna get ready, and their defense, Alabama's defense, is gonna hold Jackson Arnold, to 68 yards passing. I just told you that, and you'd be like, roll tide, roll, baby. Ain't nothing but ain't gonna give a piss about nothing but tide. Like, they're gonna win by 100, if that's the case. Especially with Milroe, how he's been playing. 68 yards is gonna hold him to big time. Yeah, no, it didn't matter, because when you had 131 yards rushing, not to mention, I think they had over 200 yards on the ground. I mean, obviously they had over 300 yards on the ground, almost, if not. And that's just the kind of night it was. And it's the fewest points scored by an Alabama team since 2004. It's the first time since 2004 in that game when they scored 3 points against South Carolina that they've been held without a touchdown. Put that in perspective for you. Actually, check that. Check that last stat. It's the lowest points total since South Carolina in 2004. Yeah, 3 points isn't going to win you many games, and they scored first. So I guess there's moral victory. So pat on the back there. But that was the only win they got on Saturday night because it was all Sooners. And for the time being, right now, Alabama I think sits outside the playoffs. They're going to need some help, and they're going to need a little bit of sweet talking because I just don't see how this is going to start to become a big giant mess. Because if you can tell me the top 12 teams in the country, I'll pay you. Because I have no idea. I mean, right now I posted on my Twitter the let me see here, pull up my tweet. So I do a top 10, top 10, top 12, whatever it is, after each week, after all the action's done. And as I'm laying in bed, I tweet it out real quick and I go to bed. But my top 12 doesn't have Alabama in it. It's just I'm going to be blunt with you. It doesn't have Alabama. It doesn't have Ole Miss in it. We'll talk about them in a second. But they have some work to do. They're going to need some help going forward. And probably starts with SMU possibly losing. Probably going to need Vanderbilt to beat Tennessee. They're going to need a little bit of help going forward. And I don't know right now because you fall into that 3-loss category now. You're not even playing for conference title. It's going to be tough sled for that time. All right, speaking of another team that fell just short, Florida. How about Florida rising up and beats number 9 Ole Miss 24-17 in the Swamp? It was senior day. I was there to watch it all unfold. Beautiful day in Gainesville, one of the few. And but it was another sold out crowd. It was a little slow early. Seats were still filing in, but it was a little lackluster for the first quarter. But eventually everyone got into the stadium. It was a rowdy environment for sure. It wasn't anything deafening or anything crazy like that, but a good crowd. But listen, for the Gators, how about this? Back-to-back ranked wins against playoff or teams that were in playoff contention, only to get swallowed whole by the Swamp. And it's a great resume builder for Billy Napier, who's been through hell this season. I mean, the coach who's been fired, probably about 6 or 7 times this year, but he just keeps showing up, keeps on grinding. They're starting to do a little bit more in the high school recruits. But as far as the season goes, like he hadn't lost the locker room. The team has rallied around him. And after that bye week, they just started, competing better, playing much, much better on defense. And this team has just made a complete 180 from where it started this year in the blowouts against A&M, blowouts against Miami. Just completely pushed Tennessee to the brink, had Georgia on the ropes for a couple quarters. You exclude the Texas game because you didn't have Lagway, but then, take care of LSU, take care of Ole Miss. But the biggest stories in this game, really for 2 of them, for me, it was Ole Miss's missed opportunities. 3 red zone drives, 0 points. One of them was a missed field goal, and then 2 were inside the Gators' 15-yard line. They went for it both on 4th down instead of trying to kick the field goals. They did the old JJ McGee's, Wildcat with the big man. Stopped short. They went 2 of 4 on 4th down, and the 3 turnovers, massive, all in the second half. Second half turnovers will be a killer. Ask Alabama. And now, Ole Miss, there was a big turning point. I think it was like early third. Your defense gets a big stop. You're going to have really good field position. You had Florida pinned back. And Jordan Watkins just fumbles the punt, muffs it. Now, luckily, Florida didn't do anything on offense on the drive. They hit the field goal. It was a long 50-plus yarder from Trey Smack. But, you got lucky there. But then, nonetheless, that's another squandered missed opportunity. And then you had the 2 picks late in the 4th where the receivers were a little lackluster for Ole Miss, I thought, in this one. Trey Harris played early in this game. I mean, he scored a really nice touchdown pass and then took a weird hit on the sideline on a ball that he thought he caught it. It was ruled a catch, then it wasn't. but he got hurt and left after that game. I mean, he was coming in. This was his first game back in a couple games. So for him to leave early like that, you knew it was going to be a tough spot, I think, already for Ole Miss because, like, he's their big-time guy, their big-time threat on the outside. He's their big-body receiver. I mean, because everyone else on their receiving core isn't really the biggest group. I mean, the next one up is probably their tight ends with Prescorn and their other guy. And then you have Caden Lee and Jordan Watkins, who really aren't the tallest guys. They're shifty and speedsters, but, like, there's nothing crazy. They had a couple big-time drops. And then, you could start to see, like, Arnold or Jackson Dart. I'm getting him and Arnold mixed up now. But Jackson Dart was starting to press a little bit towards the end. Obviously, you're crunched on time, but he was starting to press a little bit down the field, and he made some careless mistakes. I mean, he threw one interception that got overturned. It looks like the game's over on that. And then, like, 2 plays later, he throws another pick. There was a, there was some miscommunication as far as route goes because the receivers just stopped and he overthrew it by probably about 10 or 15 yards right into Bryce Thornton's hands. So it was just a tough day for Jackson Dart, who I thought played a reasonably decent game considering everything else that was going on. I mean, his legs were big a couple plays in this game, but it was UF running the football. I talked about it in the preview. They have to run the football in order to have success. You're going up against one of the best run-stopping units in the nation that has been tested, unlike Indiana. And, I mean, early on, it was a little tough, but then they kind of got there, but they stuck with it. That was the thing. You would have to stick with it. Something Georgia didn't do, even though, they kind of did, but they didn't. But Florida, they stuck with it. They remained balanced on offense. And when you run the football, especially with a quarterback like DJ Lagway, who's not going to blow you away on the stat sheet, but if you can run the football effectively enough, you're going to play right into what he's really good at. And that's taking the deep shots down the field because he's really accurate with the football down the field. And they were able to do that. They rushed for 165 yards rushing. Montreal Johnson had a great day coming back as RB1 in this one. Jacoby Jackson and Jaden Ball both had playing time, but it was Johnson's backfield. Johnson had 170 yards, on 18 carries. He had the big touchdown that I believe ended up being the go-ahead touchdown in the fourth quarter. But I mean, that was the key right there. They stayed balanced, unlike Ole Miss that was very pass heavy. If you look at the stats, so there's your difference maker. You become the more balanced offense, and you take advantage of Ole Miss's missed opportunities. You're gonna have a good day. Doing whatever you want, for sure. I thought DJ Lagway played good again. Again, nothing's gonna blow you away on the stat sheet. I mean, he was 10 of 17 for 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, threw a wonky pick that ended up, that led to an Ole Miss touchdown. He was sacked a few times, but his ability to get out of trouble on some of the plays where he could have taken probably about 2 or 3 more sacks, his ability to get out of that, get the ball out of his hands before going down was really cool to see. And again, he just made, he makes 1 or 2 plays that are just going to be like you're scrolling through his Twitter and you just see it. You're like, whoa, that's a social media big time play right there. And that's what he is right now. Again, he's not going to blow you away on the stat sheet, but he's going to make those plays that big time quarterbacks make when they're under duress, when they need to make a play. It's like, hey, DJ, we need you to go make a play for us because, bail us out in a sense. Like, he's been doing that. It's just been really cool to see. As far as Ole Miss playoff hopes go, they're gone. It's the 3rd loss. That Kentucky game earlier on in the year is the backbreaker. Because, you win that, you're at 2 losses now. You're still sitting pretty good, especially with everything else that went down. And so, a loss at the Swamp is a lot more respectable than losing at home to Kentucky. Kentucky can't beat anybody right now. But they went into your building and beat you. That's not a good look. I mean, and then this was the year for Ole Miss. They put all the chips on the table. They put all this money in NIL to bring all these guys in. This was the season that they were going to make the run to the playoffs to contend for a national title. And they're not even probably going to make it. And barring anything else goes on. Now, we have rivalry week, and so God knows what's going to happen. with that. But I mean, right now it looks like they will not be making the playoffs. I mean, the wins now at South Carolina are really big. Georgia is a really, really big win. Um, but you'll let the Ole Miss game, or you let the LSU game slip away from you. You let the Kentucky game get out of hand, and then the Florida game. You are a couple plays away from winning all those games, and you didn't. So now you're stuck with that 9-3 record. You're on the outside looking in, and they're like Alabama. They're going to need to cross their fingers and hope for a bunch of chaos to happen in order for them to kind of backdoor their way in, because they can't now rely on the conference championship bid to get in. And then we already talked about Billy Napier. Now looking ahead to next season, if assuming they beat Florida State, you need to continue to build on high school recruiting. They're doing a good job of that. They've been on fire the last couple of days. Getting recruits either to flip or to just sign verbally, obviously, because the national signing day isn't for another couple months or so, or another month or so. But now you need to take that alleged buyout money and push it towards NIL transfer portal when it opens up here in a couple of weeks. But this could be a team to look out for next year. And you have Lagway, he's gonna be sticking around, obviously. And then you're gonna need to bring in some receivers, because you're losing Badger, you're losing DK, to the top targets. If you can retain Eugene Wilson, who had hip surgery, there's been rumors maybe considering going to the portal. If he can get him to stay, add another piece or two, this could be a dangerous team, because you're gonna have Jaden Ball, Jacoby Jackson back. You have some playmakers now on the offense. So I mean, you finished 7-5 this year. You play pretty much similar schedule. You play the exact same schedule next year. We'll see. You get these young guys. I think this year, if you go 7-5 this year with all these youngsters, finally you just continuing to get more reps, get more game time, getting more acclimated to college football, because it's a massive jump from high school to college, especially in the SEC. So for them to continue to get reps, competing, winning games, it's huge. Especially, it just momentum carrying it into next season is a massive thing. And a team like Florida, they can continue to do that. That will be huge. And it'll just create more confidence, more, off-season buzz going in. And then if they can do well in the portal and in recruiting in the high school ranks, again, it just continues to add to the more buzz. It's also going to increase expectations, though. So will they be able to take that next step now as a program? All right, moving on to the third and final wild game in the SEC. Auburn wins a classic versus number 15 Texas A&M, 43-41 in 4 overtimes it took. And it was Jordan Hare Voodoo Magic on full display once again Saturday night. The Auburn Tigers jumped out to a 21-0 lead. It looked like A&M had just been hit by a cannon, just complete, utter shell shock, had no response, no answers for anything. But they found it deep. They dug deep. They stormed all the way back, tied the game at 21, took the lead at the end of the fourth quarter, 31-28, before Auburn went right down the field to kick a game-tying field goal that sent it into overtime. And then in overtime, both teams scored a touchdown first. Second overtime, Auburn gets hosed on an OPI call that would have put them at around the 3 or 4 yard line. It would have been first and goal. They would have scored a touchdown, obviously, because of the way Jarquez Hunter was running. But it gets called all the way, pushes them all the way back, forces them to kick a deep field goal. They make it with their field goal issues this year. That was a miracle. But ball don't lie, because Texas A&M got called with an early holding call earlier in the drive, pushed them back, and then a little bit of lackluster play calling setup made them kick a field goal, and they forced a triple overtime, where both teams failed to convert on the 2-point off, as it becomes. And then we get to the fourth overtime, where Auburn's Keandre Lambert-Smith made a spectacular catch in the middle of the back part of the end zone. Just really, really amazing catch. He should have probably caught the 2-point one in the third overtime, but it was thrown just a tad late by Peyton Thorne. So to him to bounce back, make this big catch here in the fourth overtime was huge. And then it was Texas A&M's turn. and they drop a really, really nice play. It was a nice little, like, you know, fake. There was a handoff to the one guy, hand it back to Marcel Reed, and Marcel Reed had Amari Daniels, excuse me, wide open. Wide open. He threw it nice and soft enough, or soft but hard enough to get it to him without getting, tipped or intercepted. And it just hits his hands and he drops it. There's nothing, no other way to say it. He just dropped it right. It was thrown perfectly right to him, and he dropped it. And Auburn gets the big, big win they have been searching for all year. You talk about tough luck. I mean, Auburn has lost so many close games this year. For them to finally get a win like this, to probably, just give this program a little bit of life going into next week, going into the offseason, because, I mean, barring a magical win in Tuscaloosa this weekend, this team will not be going to a bowl game. Now they could, because God knows which Alabama team you're going to get, which Auburn team you're going to get. So historically Auburn has struggled going to Tuscaloosa. If this game was in Jordan-Hare, I would say, look out. But going to Tuscaloosa, it's going to be a tall task for the Auburn Tigers. But you never know. You never know. But barring anything, it's just good momentum building into the offseason. But as far as the game goes, everything else, Jarquez Hunter had a huge game. Had 28 carries, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he was rolling, just running right down A&M's throat. And A&M has had a tough time this year stopping top-end running backs in this conference. Jarquez Hunter on Saturday. Rocket Sanders had a big game. Caden Durham had a decent game. Jalen Miller ran wild. Oh, no. Hold up. Nope. I was thinking of LSU. But, obviously, you can tell, some of these teams have had really good success running the ball against A&M, and Jarquez Hunter was the next one in line for that. Peyton Thorne didn't have the doomsday turnover like he's had all season long, and that was huge. He did have one interception, I believe, but it wasn't, the big one, like the one against Oklahoma, the ones against Cal earlier this year, stuff like that where you just ended any hope of your team winning. And Texas A&M really struggled protecting the quarterback. That's been an issue some parts this year. They allowed 4 sacks on 7 tackles for loss. Noah Thomas, who had a really, really big game, he had 5 catches, 124 yards, 2 touchdowns, was not involved at the end. I thought the play calling was a little lackluster outside of the one play that failed on the 2-point conversion. It was a little lackluster. You weren't getting your playmakers going or involved in that matter. So to not get it to your best guy in the biggest spot of the game was a little head scratching. And A&M's got to be able to flush this, because you still have everything in front of you. A college football playoff is still right there for the taking. You've got to now win out, though. No room for error. You've got to beat Texas. Now you got to go beat Georgia if you beat Texas. So it's still there, but now you got to go. No room for error. You can't lose again. But they've got to be able to flush this and just get ready for Texas. And then I do think they were getting ready for Texas, because I do think this was just the classic look ahead spot. I mean, hell, Mike Elko said it. We're getting ready for Texas. I mean Auburn. Right there is when you knew they're preparing for Auburn, but they're getting ready for Texas. So I would expect a much different team Saturday night against Texas than you saw against Auburn. But again, this could have been just the classic Jordan-Hare voodoo, where, that stadium's cursed, for God's sakes. I mean, it's built on an Indian burial ground. I don't think anybody could tell me otherwise. It may not even be true. It probably isn't true, but it might. And that's what you got to always consider when you're talking about Jordan-Hare Stadium. So good win for Auburn. Tough loss for A&M. They got to flush it and get ready for Texas this weekend. All right. Number 21, Arizona State holds on to beat number 14, BYU, 28-23. The Sun Devils jumped out to an early 21-3 lead heading into half. It was all Arizona State. I mean, the crowd was going wild. Camp Scadaboo was running wild. But BYU clawed back, even cutting it to 5 in the fourth quarter. And they had chances to take the lead, to cut the lead, or cut Arizona State lead, down even more, and they just couldn't. And part of the reason was because Cam Scatterbo was running all over the place. 28 carries, 147 yards, 3 touchdowns. And the wild ending of this game is really what I want to talk about here. Jake Retzloff throws a really, really bad pick, and it seems like the game's over after that. I mean, Arizona State has the ball inside, I think, the BYU, inside the 10, inside the BYU 10 after the return with just over a minute or just over a minute to go. Arizona State has a chance to either score or just milk the clock out and get out of there with a win. They do it, but they do a terrible job at mismanaging the clock because they try to do the old just run around and kill clock, and then do the same thing a couple more times. And it looked like it had worked until it didn't. They on the 4th down, they run around a little bit. He just chucks the ball into the stands, and it looks like the game's over. Clock hits 0. Fans are rushing the field, singing "Kumbaya," yeah. And then all of a sudden, the refs come together. They go to review while everyone is on the field. The field goal post is down. There's fans on the field. The refs are reviewing to see if there's any time left. Well, there was 1 second left. Kenny Dillingham could not believe it. He was hooting and hollering. The videos are out there to watch. He could not believe it. And now it was all about getting the fans off the field to just run this one play, which was about midfield for a Hail Mary for 10 for BYU. It took 13 minutes to get everyone off the field, only for the Hail Mary attempt to fall just 3 yards short. And he caught it, but again, he was just short. You can talk about that close to a near comeback victory of a lifetime, of the one of the biggest ones of all time. But unfortunately for BYU, they dropped their 2nd straight. They put themselves not out of the Big 12 race, but they just clumped themselves back together. I don't even know the scenarios. I know that if Arizona State beats Arizona this weekend, they will be heading to Dallas for the Big 12 title game. So just a complete turnaround season for Arizona State. Again, picked to be one of the bottom tier teams in the Big 12. First year in the conference. But Kenny Dillingham in the 2nd year says, screw all that. We're going to go out there and get our 9th win of the year. Be 9-2 heading into rivalry week. So really good. Really give my applaud to the Sun Devils for getting a big time win. But now, listen, got to take care of business. Got a big time record, may not show it, but listen, you got to take care of business against your most bitter of rival for sure. Who I believe Arizona beat them last year. So revenge, if that's the case, is I can neither confirm nor deny. And I'm not going to spend time here looking up. So, all right. We're moving on, though, to our final big-time headlining recap of the day. Number 4, Penn State overcomes an early deficit and beats Minnesota 26-25. The Nittany Lions fell down 10-0 early in this game. But they clawed their way back. And they did trail at half. It was 19-16. But listen, again, they clawed their way back, and they were helped out a bunch because of Minnesota turnovers. Minnesota turnovers led to 6 points for Penn State, including a fumble and an interception. And then eventually, Penn State was able to go up 26-22. Minnesota cut the lead to 1 with just under 6 minutes to go in the game. But Penn State closed the game out, converting 3 straight 4th down conversions, including a fake punt from their own 34-yard line. I give James Franklin, criticism, let's say, and for not showing up in big games. I mean, it is what it is in that field. But listen, I give him all the props. His big kahunas, he dropped him out. He dropped him out and laid him on the table in this final drive. Because there's not many teams that are going to be willing to risk that. And if you don't get it there, I mean, you're setting Minnesota up to kick a go-ahead field goal, but eventually maybe even win this game. So for them to do that, convert, and then do it 2 more times, really, really ballsy stuff. And then as far as Penn State, because obviously they held on and win this game, Um, I just don't again, I don't see how they should be ranked as high as they are. There's a possibility maybe the committee flip-flops them in Notre Dame. Maybe they do that. I had Notre Dame ahead of Penn State because you can't be struggling against Minnesota like that. Um, Again, you had the one big game you had to win was Ohio State. You lost, so you should have to go out now and dominate the rest of the way. And they've been a little lackluster in a couple of these games, and this was one of them. Again, I don't have any problem with them being in, but they need to be showing a little more, style points because the style points are a thing in college football, and they're just not doing it. And with that, I just don't see how they should be ranked where they are at 4. Just not. It's not where they need to be. They are between a 6 and 8 team. Realistically, I mean, there's nothing special about this Penn State team. They just, again, they're like Indiana. They're being dealt the schedule. They're being dealt, and they're taking advantage of it. Because other than that, like, there's nothing special about this team. I mean, Abdul Carter's a hell of a playmaker on the defensive line, but this offense is very, very one dimensional. And if it's a Tyler Warren show, and if it's not there, it's Drew Aller just scrambling with his legs, and then that's it. There's nothing else about it. So, I mean, credit to them getting a big win, but again, nothing. This game kind of proved to me why they shouldn't be ranked as where they are. All right, moving on though to around the country. We have a couple games here we're going to be highlighting that weren't headlining material, but they need to give their flowers for sure. Georgia Tech on Thursday night beat NC State 30-29. The Ramblin' Wreck moved 7-4, and talking about a wild ending for sure. Here, NC State took the lead on a 53-yard run with 1:30 left in the game. Looked like it was NC State that was going to be walking out of Bobby Dodd with a win, but Georgia Tech said no. Aaron Philo said no. They scored on an 18-yard run with 22 seconds left in the game. And Aaron Philo is becoming something very special here for Georgia Tech. He went 19 of 33, 265 yards. He rushed for 57 yards and then obviously scored the go-ahead touchdown. But, man, he's just a tough runner. He can make smart throws when they're there. And Georgia needs to be very more equipped at tackling runners, especially quarterbacks. They struggled doing that this weekend against UMass. And so if they can't do that against Tech, Tech's going to give them all they can handle for 4 quarters. Because when you let Georgia Tech run the ball for 5 to 7 yards to carry, like they're going to be in a 4-quarter fight for sure. Speaking of Georgia, they beat UMass 59-21. UMass rushed for 226 yards. Georgia only had 1 drive in the first quarter. We're talk about UMass controlling the clock early on. The Minutemen, they had the ball for more than a minute, though. And that had something to do because they were rushing the ball so well. Georgia's linebackers and defensive backs could not tackle for crap. They were getting beat on simple runs. They were letting up some gash runs that had no business being given up. And unfortunately for Georgia, early on, they were trading blows with UMass. Can't be doing that. And but Georgia was able to dial it back in the second half against the Minutemen, and defensively at least, and get a couple stops, got some turnovers, scored a big scoop score at the end of the game for Chris Cole. But how about Georgia's offensive? Scored 7 of 9 drives. Those 9 drives were the only two drives they didn't score was end of the game and turnover on downs. Georgia had 550 yards total offense. Carson Beck continues to play well. He had I believe two touchdowns. Nate Frazier had 3 on the ground, but Carson Beck did not have any interceptions again. It's now the second straight game in a row. He has not had any. So, listen, if he can continue to play smart football while having success through the air, but not turning the football over, this team is as dangerous as ever. There's now reports like that. Roderick Robinson are practicing again. They're questionable heading into Friday night's game. Dylan Bell and Anthony Evans are Anthony Edwards. Shout out UJ alum Anthony Edwards. But Anthony Evans and Dylan Bell look to be good to go, barring any setbacks for Friday's game, which is going to be a big boost for the receivers. And then Colby Young finally practiced today for the team. After hopefully now the charges are being dropped for the whole big mess off the field with the fake, the made up story by his ex girlfriend, which has had him suspended for most of the year. It's just a terrible, terrible act by her, and that's all I'm going to say on that. You can I have a post about it on my Twitter, but he's practicing now, so hopefully now they can get him fully back. I don't know the full details. I just know he's practicing it. So check out Grand Coffee, Dogs Nation, Brooks Austin. They have articles about it. Go check it out there. But listen, Georgia getting guys back healthy here for the stretch run. That going under the radar here. Better keep an eye on that. Team like Georgia, who's starting to play better ball now, getting guys back. Look out. Miami beat Wake Forest 42-14. The score doesn't indicate how close it probably was for most of the game, but Miami pulled ahead late. SMU took care of business, beating Virginia 33-7. They clinched a spot in the ACC title game. So congrats to Rhett Lashley and the Mustangs, who look to become just the fourth team all time to win their conference in the first year of being in it. So last team to do it, I believe, was Virginia Tech in 2004. So. Number 25, Illinois miraculously beat Rutgers 36-31. It was Pat Bryant's 40-yard touchdown catch to be the ultimate game winner with 4 seconds left. It was a play called Church that ended up being the winner. So shout out the Church play. And that's a big win for Illinois or for Penn State because right now, again, Illinois, that is their best win on the year. So, they're holding on to that Illinois game. And if Illinois lost to Rutgers, now you're talking about resumes again. Now, again, Penn State being ranked that high, no reason for it. Number 3, Texas beat Kentucky 31-14. Offense still looks like it's in neutral, waiting for them to put it in drive or sport mode, like one of the two. Like, pick one. It's still stuck in neutral. Again, this is another score that doesn't indicate how close it was. I mean, Kentucky had no business being in this game for that long, and Texas made it a ball game going into the fourth before they pulled ahead. Quinn Ewers underwent an MRI on Sunday for an ankle, but it looks like there's reports that it's just a mild sprain, so he should be good to go, barring any setbacks. So that's a big, big sigh of relief if you're a Longhorn fan, especially heading into the biggest game of the year. It's Texas A&M, your most bitter rival. They haven't played them in 11 years. 15. Something like 13, 14 years. I don't know. I'll figure out a number. Go roll with it. It's late here. Give me a little slack. Cut me a some. Anyway, Kansas beat Colorado 37-21. Devin Neal put on a show on Saturday. 37 carries, 270 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also had 80 yards receiving, and 1 touchdown. So he had 4 in the day. Colorado dug themselves a hole early in this game and just could never get out of it. There was a missed roughing the passer call where Shedeur Sanders literally folded up like a piece of paper, and they didn't call anything. And it was just a tough day for Colorado. I think they let all the hype and let all the playoff talk chatter get to them. Deion Sanders said it in his post game in the locker room, like, you guys got humbled. You guys let success get to you. That toxicity was flowing right through you, and it bit them in the ass for sure. So hopefully they can bounce back. Listen, they've exceeded expectations. Nobody had them in this, even remotely in contention at this point going into the year. And so that for them to even be in this spot is big time. So I still don't think it's not going to be a losing season for Colorado. I think they can definitely, finish the year out strong, go win a bowl game, and just keep building for next season. All right, Nebraska beat Wisconsin 44-28. They finally get to bowl eligibility. First time since 2016, the Cornhuskers are heading to a bowl game. They stormed the field. And credit to Matt Rule for finally getting his Cornhuskers to a bowl game. Number 6 Notre Dame beat Army. Our beloved Black Knights took a beating on Saturday, 49-14. Honestly, it's very un-American what Notre Dame did, not just Army. Notre Dame, they did the same thing to Navy earlier this year. Just very unpatriotic. If you ask me, I think we have a Benedict Arnold situation. I'm just saying crimes for treason might need to be pushed forward. I'm just saying. I mean, we can't be on Military Appreciation Day. We're doing that to Army. We couldn't have kept it close. Come on. I mean, every time I looked up the game, it felt like Notre Dame had the ball inside the Army 10, and they were either scoring a touchdown or about to. It was just a tough day for the Black Knights, and you had their work cut out for them. I said going into the game, if Notre Dame could get them in passing situations and get ahead early, this was going to be tough, and that's exactly what happened, unfortunately. So, but listen, Army could still win the conference, and if Boise State falls, Army's right there heading into the playoff. Still right there for the taking, boys. We can still finish the year out strong. We're going to take care of UTSA this weekend, and then we're going to take care of Tulane in the conference title game. So finish the year out strong. Speaking of Boise State, they beat Wyoming 17-13. Struggled for majority of the game. And listen, Wyoming got a fourth quarter lead on them. But listen, they found a way to get a big win against a very, very bad opponent. But, games get weird in Cheyenne, and that's what happened. But Ashton Jeanty had himself a nice game, 169 yards on 19 carries. He had a big 60-yard run, if I remember correctly. That was his only touchdown of the day. But credit to the Broncos for finding a win and staying, the leg up on everyone else in the Group of 5 race to the playoff. And finally, today we're going to talk about our best bets, 3 and 4 in the weekend. Some tough breaks in the loss department. UCLA not covering was a travesty at the end of the, when you stay up to about 2 in the morning to watch UCLA not cover, it really hurts. It does. They had it right there for the taking, and they just could not get anything going offensively. That was tough to watch. Trying to think who else failed me. Alabama. Again, we already talked about what went wrong there. Colorado was a tough one. What was the other one? There was one more. When it comes back to Army. Sorry about that. Now, Army was a tough one too. But listen, shout out. Let's give out a applaud to Arizona State, UF, and Ole Miss not going to overtime. They hit the under in that game. And then what was our third one? I don't even. Let's check. Who is it? I have to scroll back through here. That's right. I didn't even write it down. Well, nonetheless, though, we went 3 and 4. If you want to check back on the socials, I have the teams I picked. I totally forgot. Okay, but because I've already flushed this, and I'm getting ready for the rivalry week. I already have some bets locked and loaded that I will be handing out in the preview episode. So stay tuned. Stay tuned in that department. But listen, we bounced back from a dreadful 0-4 game 0-4 week last week. We're still 11 games over 500. We're going to finish the year out strong. We're going to finish the year out right. Listen, I'm feeling generous because it's 1:30 in the morning, and I feel like handing out a best bet. So we're going to hand out a best bet right now. We will add the rest of the clip later on this week. I have a couple here, barring anything crazy. I have. Give me 1 second. I'm going to write it down. Ohio State minus 20.5. You better get it before the hook because that line I think is going to continue to go up. I get 20.5 with Ohio State at home against a pathetic Michigan team. They will release 3 years of frustration onto Michigan this weekend. They will be smoking Michigan this weekend. We're going to talk about it. How Michigan can even have it compete in this game. Michigan is going to get smoked in this one. I'm just going to tell you right now. They just don't have the guys. Talk about talent. They just don't have the guys to stack up against Ohio State. And unless Ohio State just crumbles like the Roman Empire, I really don't see how Michigan's going to compete in this game. And the game being in Ohio State, it just adds that they're going to range fire from the stands onto the Wolverine sideline. It's going to be a tough day for Michigan. Give me Ohio State minus 20. There's your early best bet of the week. We will have the rest of the clip later on in the weekend or in our preview episode. As everyone knows, though, it is Thanksgiving weekend or Thanksgiving week. So podcast will be dropping sometime probably close. It's either going to be Wednesday or early Thursday morning. So get it all out before the Friday games, because, Egg Bowls, they moved it to Friday. Criminal. I don't know why we ever move it off of Thanksgiving night, because now I got to watch NFL football. I mean, it's a good Sunday night or good Thursday night game, Miami and Green Bay. But that was my Egg Bowl time. I got to watch NFL football. Ugh. But they moved to the 3:30 spot. We got Georgia Tech. I think Iowa and Nebraska are playing too on Friday night. So we got a full college football slate on Friday. So we're gonna get all the we'll get the podcast out Wednesday evening-ish, Thursday morning, one of those 2 days, and just let you guys enjoy it. But other than that, though, I just want to say thank you for watching or listening if you're on Spotify or Amazon Music. And make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast, because that's the only way we continue to build the show, grow the show as a whole, and get to the promised land, as they once say. And if you want to follow me on social media, like I said earlier, at DeLauder Hunter on X/Twitter, Instagram, Hunter.DeLauder83. Hope you guys enjoy the podcast. Be back later this week with preview for week 14, rivalry week. Until then, enjoy, and I'll peace out.